Have you ever woken up feeling like your life no longer fits? Like something deeper inside you is stirring, demanding change? This isn't just a phase, it's your soul rising, and it's trying to tell you something profound. In this video from ZENLIGHT 8, we dive into the 12 powerful signs of this awakening, inspired by Carl Jung's timeless wisdom. Stick around until the end to uncover practical insights you can apply right now to embrace this transformation and live more authentically. Don't miss it. Let's explore together. There's a moment in life when the world you've always known starts to feel like a jacket that's 2 sizes too small. You wake up in the same bed, brew the same coffee, drive the same route to work, but something inside you no longer clicks. It's not that the bed is uncomfortable or the coffee tastes bitter. It's that the rhythm of your existence feels out of sync. The routines that once grounded you now feel like a script you're tired of reading. The people you laugh with, the conversations you nod through, the goals you chase, they don't stir you anymore. At first, you might mistake this for exhaustion, maybe even a midlife crisis or a bad week. You tell yourself to snap out of it, to try harder, to recommit to the life you've built. But no matter how much you push, there's a quiet ache in your chest, a signal that something deeper is shifting. This isn't a breakdown. This isn't failure. This is the soul waking up, whispering that it's time to step into a truer version of yourself. This sensation, this subtle but undeniable feeling of misalignment, is the first sign that your soul is rising. It's not loud or dramatic like a movie climax. It's quiet, like the sound of leaves falling in autumn, noticeable only if you stop to listen. The life you've lived, the one shaped by expectations, obligations, and the need to belong, starts to feel like a house you've outgrown. The walls are still sturdy, the furniture still familiar, but you keep bumping into corners that no longer make sense. You might be sitting in a meeting, nodding at the right moments, but your mind drifts to questions you've never dared ask. Why am I here? Is this what I'm meant to do? What if the life I've built isn't mine at all? These questions aren't a sign of ingratitude or weakness. They're the soul's way of knocking, asking you to open the door to a deeper truth. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist whose insights into the human psyche remain timeless, described this as the beginning of individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are. He believed that the soul doesn't evolve in comfort. It grows through disruption, through moments when the familiar no longer fits. This disruption isn't about external chaos, like losing a job or moving to a new city. It's internal, a psychological shift that makes you question the roles you've played, the masks you've worn, and the stories you've told yourself to survive. For Jung, this was sacred work, not a crisis to be fixed, but a calling to be answered. The discomfort you feel isn't a problem. It's an invitation to peel back the layers of who you thought you had to be and uncover who you've always been. Imagine a woman named Sarah, a 38-year-old marketing manager in Seattle. She's successful by every measure. A 6-figure salary, a corner office, a family who loves her. She's the one her friends call for advice, the one her team relies on to close deals. But one morning, as she's driving her usual 20-mile commute, she feels a pang she can't explain. The skyline she's always admired feels distant, like it belongs to someone else's story. At work, the goals that once lit her up, hitting quotas, winning pitches, feel hollow. She tries to shake it off, signing up for a yoga class, booking a weekend getaway to the Oregon coast. But the feeling lingers. It's not depression or burnout. It's a quiet knowing that the life she's mastered isn't hers anymore. Sarah's story isn't unique. It's the universal experience of the soul rising, a moment when the self you've constructed for the world starts to crack, making space for something more authentic. From a philosophical perspective, this misalignment is a call to practice existential courage, the willingness to confront life's big questions without settling for easy answers. Philosophers like Soren Kierkegaard argued that true living begins when we face the dread of our own freedom, the realization that we're not bound to the paths we've inherited. In modern America, where success is often measured by external markers, degrees, promotions, Instagram followers, this dread can feel like betrayal. You're told to hustle, to optimize, to keep climbing. But what happens when the ladder you're on leads to a place you no longer want to go? This is where critical thinking becomes a lifeline. Instead of accepting the discomfort as failure, you can question it. What assumptions have I made about happiness? Whose definition of success am I chasing? What if this feeling is guiding me towards something truer? Critical thinking doesn't mean overanalyzing or doubting everything. It means listening to the signals your soul is sending and daring to trust them. In practical terms, this might look like journaling for 10 minutes each night, asking yourself, what felt off today? What moments made me feel alive? For Sarah, journaling revealed that her happiest moments weren't in boardrooms, but in quiet evenings gardening or reading poetry with her daughter. These insights didn't solve everything, but they gave her permission to explore a life aligned with her deeper values. You can apply this too. Start small. Notice one thing each day that feels misaligned, whether it's a conversation that drains you or a goal that no longer excites you. Then ask, what would feel more like me? This isn't about quitting your job or moving to a cabin in the woods, though for some, it might be. It's about making space for the truth to breathe. In today's fast-paced world, where notifications ping every 5 seconds and productivity apps track your every move, this kind of introspection can feel radical. American culture often equates busyness with worth, leaving little room for stillness. But stillness is where the soul speaks. Studies from the University of Virginia in 2014 showed that many people would rather endure mild electric shocks than sit alone with their thoughts for 15 minutes. That's how uncomfortable stillness can be. Yet, it's in those quiet moments, whether you're walking a trail in a state park or sipping tea on your porch, that you begin to hear the soul's voice. It might say, this job isn't you anymore, or these friendships are holding you back, or you're meant to create, not just consume. The challenge is to listen without rushing to fix or dismiss it. This process also demands emotional resilience. Feeling misaligned can bring waves of sadness, not because you're ungrateful, but because you're mourning the self you're leaving behind. This grief is sacred, a sign that you're letting go of what no longer serves you. In practical terms, you can honor this by creating rituals. Write a letter to the old version of yourself, thanking it for getting you this far, then burn it in a safe backyard fire pit, following local fire codes, of course. Or dedicate a 5-mile hike to reflecting on what you're releasing and what you're inviting in. These acts don't erase the discomfort, but they transform it into a bridge toward growth. The beauty of this moment is that it's not about destroying your life but rediscovering it. You're not throwing away your achievements or relationships, you're redefining them. Sarah didn't quit her job overnight, but she started saying no to projects that felt meaningless and carved out time for writing, a passion she'd buried since college. Over months, she found herself energized, not by external rewards, but by a sense of alignment. You can do this too, whether it's setting boundaries with a friend who gossips or choosing one evening a week to disconnect from screens and reconnect with yourself. These small shifts ripple outward, reshaping your life in ways you can't yet see. This feeling of not fitting in isn't a sign you're lost. It's proof you're waking up. It's the soul stretching, refusing to stay small, asking you to step into a life that honors your truth. In a world that often demands conformity, this is an act of rebellion, not against others, but for yourself. So if you're standing at this threshold, feeling the ache of a life that no longer fits, don't turn back. Lean in. Listen. The soul is leading you somewhere sacred, and the journey starts with trusting that this discomfort is the first step toward wholeness. Next, we'll explore what happens when this awakening pulls you toward depth, craving meaning in a world full of noise. As the soul begins to stir, you notice a shift in what captures your attention. The chatter of small talk, once a comfortable hum in the background of your life, now feels like static on a radio you can't tune out. The goals that used to drive you, climbing the corporate ladder, amassing likes on social media, or keeping up with the Joneses, lose their shine. They don't excite you anymore. They exhaust you. Instead, you find yourself craving something deeper, something that resonates with the quiet truth inside you. You're no longer satisfied with surface-level conversations that skim over life's complexities or ambitions that promise status but deliver emptiness. You want meaning, stillness, authenticity, a connection to something real. This hunger for depth isn't a rejection of the world. It's an awakening to what truly matters, a sign that your soul is rising, pulling you toward a life that aligns with who you're becoming. This craving for depth is like standing at the edge of a lake, peering into its still waters, and realizing that the surface reflects only a fraction of what lies beneath. You start to notice how much of life is spent skimming that surface. Endless meetings about nothing, gossip that fills the air but not the heart, notifications that demand your attention but offer no substance. In a culture obsessed with speed and productivity, this shift feels almost rebellious. You're not just opting out of shallow interactions. You're choosing to dive into the unknown depths of your own existence. You might find yourself at a crowded happy hour in a bustling Chicago bar, surrounded by laughter and clinking glasses, but feeling utterly disconnected. The jokes don't land the way they used to. The banter feels like a script you've outgrown. Instead, you're drawn to the quiet moments. A late-night conversation with a friend about life's big questions. A solitary walk through a park where the rustling leaves seem to whisper truths you've forgotten. Carl Jung, whose work continues to illuminate the path of self-discovery, saw this as a natural stage of the soul's evolution. He believed that the psyche yearns for wholeness, and wholeness can't be found in the noise of external validation or the fleeting highs of superficial success. To Jung, the soul speaks in moments of stillness, in the pause between thoughts, in the questions that arise when you stop running. This craving for depth is your soul's way of guiding you inward, asking you to listen to its voice over the clamor of the world. It's not about becoming a hermit or dismissing everyone around you. It's about discerning what nourishes you and what depletes you, what aligns with your truth and what pulls you away from it. Consider Mark, a 42-year-old software engineer in Austin, Texas. For years, he thrived on the adrenaline of deadlines and the prestige of working for a tech giant. His life was a blur of code sprints, networking events, and happy hours where he played the part of the charismatic team lead. But one evening, after a 12-hour workday, he sat on his balcony overlooking the Colorado River and felt an emptiness he couldn't name. The promotions, the bonuses, the applause, they weren't enough anymore. He started skipping the after-work drinks, not out of arrogance, but because the conversations felt like echoes of a life he no longer recognized. Instead, he began reading philosophy, Kierkegaard, Nietzsche, and yes, Jung, searching for answers to questions he'd never voiced. What am I really here for? What does it mean to live well? Over time, he found himself drawn to deeper connections, like volunteering at a local community garden, where conversations about soil and seasons felt more real than any boardroom pitch. From a philosophical lens, this shift reflects what Martin Heidegger called being toward death. The realization that life is finite, and living authentically means prioritizing what truly matters. In modern America, where consumerism and constant connectivity dominate, this can feel like swimming against the tide. Social media platforms reward shallow engagement, likes, retweets, viral moments, while meaningful pursuits, like self-reflection or genuine relationships, offer no immediate payoff. Critical thinking becomes essential here. You start to question the cultural scripts you've internalized. Why do I feel compelled to respond to every text instantly? Why am I chasing goals that don't excite me? What if depth, not breadth, is the key to fulfillment? These questions aren't just intellectual exercises. They're acts of rebellion against a world that equates busyness with worth. Practically, you can cultivate this depth by creating intentional space in your life. Start with a simple ritual. Set aside 15 minutes each morning to sit in silence. No phone, no agenda, just you and your breath. Notice what thoughts arise, what feelings surface. If silence feels daunting, try writing in a journal, asking, what do I really want today? Not what's expected, but what feels true. For Mark, this meant swapping one networking event a week for a philosophy discussion group, where he could wrestle with ideas that mattered. You might try something similar. Join a book club that reads challenging texts, attend a meditation retreat, or simply have coffee with someone who asks hard questions and listens deeply. These small choices compound, shifting your life toward resonance. This craving also reshapes your relationships. You start to notice which conversations leave you energized and which ones drain you. You might distance yourself from friends who thrive on drama, not because you're better than them, but because your soul craves peace. In a 2023 study from the University of California, researchers found that people who prioritized meaningful social connections those rooted in vulnerability and shared values, reported higher life satisfaction than those with larger but shallower networks. This isn't about cutting people off. It's about choosing who you let into your inner circle. You learn to say no to invitations that feel obligatory, to protect your energy for what truly matters. It's a quiet act of self-respect, one that ripples into every corner of your life. Yet, this shift isn't without its challenges. Depth can be lonely at first. You might feel like an outsider, misunderstood by those who still revel in the surface. You might grieve the ease of fitting in, the comfort of not questioning. But this grief is sacred. It's proof that you're waking up. To navigate it, lean into practices that ground you. A 3-mile run through a local trail can clear your mind, letting your body process what your soul is learning. Or try a gratitude practice, listing 3 things each day that feel meaningful, whether it's a quiet moment with your dog or a conversation that left you inspired. These acts remind you that depth isn't a burden. It's a gift, a compass guiding you toward a life that's yours. As you embrace this craving, you begin to see the world differently. The noise of everyday life, billboards, news cycles, endless emails, loses its grip. You start to notice the beauty in the subtle. The way sunlight filters through a coffee shop window, the sound of your child's laughter, the weight of a good book in your hands. This is the soul's language, and it speaks in moments of presence. By choosing depth over distraction, you're not just changing your habits, you're rewriting your story, one that honors the truth of who you are. But this journey toward depth often comes with a price, one that feels like everything is falling apart. Next, we'll explore how this collapse, far from destruction, is the birthplace of transformation. The moment you start chasing depth, you might expect clarity, a straight path to a more meaningful life. But the soul doesn't work that way. Instead, you often find yourself standing in the rubble of what used to be. The beliefs you held, the roles you played, the dreams you chased, they begin to crack, not because you failed, but because they no longer fit the person you're becoming. It feels like collapse. Emotions swirl like a storm, relationships fray, and the certainty you once clung to dissolves. You might cry for no reason, question everything you've built, or feel a heaviness that makes you wonder if you're unraveling. But this isn't destruction. This is transformation, a sacred dismantling of what no longer serves you, making way for something truer to take root. Carl Jung understood this process deeply. He wrote that real transformation doesn't arrive through comfort but through disruption, a kind of psychological death that clears space for rebirth. He called it the collapse of the persona, the moment when the mask you've worn for others, for yourself, starts to crumble. This isn't a gentle process. It's raw, messy, like tearing down an old house to build something new. You might be a teacher in Denver, like Lisa, who spent 15 years shaping young minds, only to realize that her passion for education was built on pleasing her parents, not her own desires. One day, grading papers late at night, she feels a wave of grief, not for her students, but for the dreams she buried to be the good daughter. The life she's proud of suddenly feels like a cage. She doesn't quit teaching overnight, but the cracks in her identity, dutiful daughter, selfless educator, begin to widen, and with them comes a flood of questions. Who am I without these roles? What do I actually want? This collapse often feels like loss because it is. You're letting go of the self you've known, the one that got you through high school, college, first jobs, first loves. It's the self that learned to smile when you were hurting, to hustle when you were exhausted, to fit in when you felt like an outsider. In America, where resilience is celebrated and vulnerability is often seen as weakness, this can feel like failure. You're taught to push through, to fake it till you make it. But the soul doesn't care about grit, cares about truth. And truth demands that you face the parts of your life that were built on survival, not authenticity. For Lisa, this meant mourning the years she spent living for others, even as she began to explore her love for painting, a passion she dismissed as impractical. Philosophically, this aligns with what Friedrich Nietzsche described as the death of God. Not a literal rejection of religion, but the collapse of old certainties that once gave life meaning. In a modern context, this might mean questioning the American dream. The idea that hard work and ambition will always lead to happiness. Critical thinking is your anchor here. Instead of seeing collapse as chaos, you can view it as clarity. Ask yourself, what beliefs am I holding onto out of habit? What parts of my life feel like performance? What would I choose if I weren't afraid of judgment? These questions don't have easy answers, but they cut through the noise, revealing what's worth keeping and what's ready to fall away. Practically, you can navigate this collapse by embracing small acts of surrender. Start by naming what's crumbling. Write it down. I'm letting go of the need to please everyone. I'm releasing the goal of being perfect. For Lisa, this meant admitting she didn't love teaching anymore. A truth that felt like betrayal at first. But speaking it, even to herself, was liberating. You can also create space for the unknown. Set aside an hour each week to do something that scares you. Not skydiving, but something soul deep, like signing up for an art class, starting therapy, or having an honest conversation with a loved one. These acts don't fix the collapse. They honor it, trusting that what's falling away is making room for what's meant to grow. Emotionally, this process can be overwhelming. A 2022 study from the American Psychological Association found that periods of intense self-reflection often trigger anxiety. But those who lean into the discomfort, through journaling, meditation, or therapy, emerge with greater self-awareness. You might feel like you're losing your grip, but you're actually gaining ground. Try grounding practices. A 10-minute walk in a local park, focusing on the feel of the earth under your feet, can tether you when emotions swirl. Or light a candle each evening, safely, on a heat-resistant surface, and sit with one question. What is this collapse teaching me? The answers might not come right away, but the act of asking keeps you open. This transformation also reshapes how you see success. In a culture that measures worth in dollars and followers, choosing authenticity over achievement can feel radical. But as you let go of what's false, you start to redefine what matters. Lisa began painting again, not for a gallery show, but for the joy of creating. Over time, she took a part-time teaching role and started a small art workshop, not because it was lucrative, but because it felt true. You can do this too. Maybe it's swapping a high-pressure job for one with less pay but more purpose, or choosing to spend your weekends hiking instead of networking. These choices aren't about escaping responsibility, they're about reclaiming your life. The beauty of this collapse is that it's not the end. It's a beginning. What feels like destruction is actually reconstruction. A chance to build a life that reflects your soul's truth. You're not breaking down. You're breaking open, shedding the weight of who you thought you had to be. In a world that demands you stay the same, this is courage. So if you're standing in the rubble, feeling the ground shift beneath you, don't run. Stay. Breathe. The soul is reshaping you, and what emerges will be stronger, truer, more alive. Next, we'll dive into how this awakening brings a flood of emotions, not as chaos, but as messengers of your deepest truth. As your soul continues its quiet revolution, you might notice a storm brewing inside you. Emotions that once stayed neatly tucked away now rise without warning, like waves crashing against a shore you thought was calm. You're driving down a familiar highway, maybe the I-95 outside Miami, and tears sting your eyes for no apparent reason. You're in a meeting, speaking calmly, when a surge of anger tightens your chest, unexpected and raw. Or you wake up at 3 a.m., a weight on your heart that has no controllers, no story, just presence. At first, this feels like losing control, like you're slipping backward into chaos. You might wonder if you're broken, if all the work you've done to hold it together is unraveling. But this isn't weakness. This isn't regression. This is release. A sacred unveiling of the feelings you've suppressed for years, demanding to be felt, not fixed. These emotions are not your enemy. They're your soul's messengers, guiding you toward a deeper truth. This flood of emotions is the soul's way of speaking when words fail. It's not polished or predictable. It's raw, human, alive. You might cry over a memory you thought you'd buried, feel a quiet rage at an injustice you once shrugged off, or sit in a stillness so profound it feels holy. These aren't random outbursts. They're the echoes of your unlived truths, the parts of you that were silenced to keep the peace, to fit in, to survive. Carl Jung, whose wisdom on the psyche remains a beacon, said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." These emotions are the unconscious rising, not to haunt you, but to heal you. They've been stored in your body, in the tension of your shoulders, the shallowness of your breath, the knots in your stomach, waiting for the moment you're ready to listen. And now, as your soul awakens, that moment has come. Picture Emily, a 35-year-old nurse in Minneapolis. She spent a decade caring for others, her days a blur of hospital shifts and her nights filled with family duties. She's known for her calm, her strength, the way she never cracks under pressure. But one evening, after a grueling 12-hour shift, she's washing dishes when a wave of sadness hits her. She drops the sponge, sinks to the kitchen floor, and sobs. Not because of a bad day, but because of all the days she's pushed through without feeling. She's not sad about one thing. She's grieving the years she spent numbing her pain to be the strong one. At first, she's ashamed, worried her colleagues or kids will see her as fragile. But as the tears flow, something shifts. She feels lighter, like a weight she didn't know she carried is lifting. This isn't a breakdown. It's a breakthrough, the soul reclaiming its right to feel. From a philosophical perspective, this emotional uprising aligns with what Jean-Paul Sartre called radical freedom. The idea that true liberation comes from owning your existence, including its messiest parts. In American culture, where positivity is often a mandate and emotions like anger or grief are seen as problems to solve, this can feel radical. We're taught to manage feelings, to smile through pain, to get over it. But the soul doesn't want management. It wants presence. Critical thinking becomes your ally here. Instead of labeling your emotions as good or bad, you can ask, what is this feeling trying to tell me? What part of me needs to be seen? What have I been avoiding? These questions don't erase the intensity, but they transform it into insight, turning chaos into clarity. Practically, you can embrace this release by creating space for your emotions to breathe. Start with a simple practice. When a feeling arises, pause. Don't analyze it, don't push it away. Sit with it, even for 60 seconds, and notice where it lives in your body. Is it a tightness in your throat? A warmth in your chest? For Emily, this meant setting aside 10 minutes each night to sit on her porch, letting whatever came, tears, anger, joy, move through her without judgment. You can also try expressive outlets. Write a letter to your younger self, forgiving the times you stayed silent, then tuck it away or burn it safely in a fire pit, following local regulations. Or take a 2-mile walk, letting your body carry the emotion as you move. These acts don't solve the feeling. They honor it, trusting that what rises needs to be felt to be free. This process requires courage, especially in a world that equates emotional intensity with instability. A 2024 study from Stanford University found that people who allow themselves to feel difficult emotions, without suppressing or overanalyzing, report lower stress levels over time. This isn't about wallowing. It's about witnessing. You might not understand why you're crying or why a memory stings decades later. And that's okay. Not every emotion needs a story. Some just need to pass, like clouds across a Minnesota sky. Ground yourself with rituals. Brew a cup of tea and sip it slowly, focusing on the warmth, or practice deep breathing. 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out for 5 minutes. These small acts tether you when the storm feels too big. The gift of this emotional release is that it rewires you. You stop fearing your feelings and start trusting them. You learn that sadness isn't failure, anger isn't destruction, and joy doesn't need permission. You become more human, more whole. Emily started sharing her feelings with a close friend, not to fix them, but to be seen. Over months, she found herself laughing more freely, speaking her truth at work, even painting again, a hobby she'd abandoned in her 20s. You can do this too. Start by naming one emotion each day, maybe in a journal. Today, I felt restless. Today, I felt alive. Then act on it, even in small ways. Say no to a draining commitment. Say yes to a moment of joy. These choices build a life where your soul's voice is no longer silenced. This emotional awakening sets the stage for a different kind of solitude. one that feels both heavy and holy. As you lean into your truth, you might find yourself pulling away, not from people, but from the noise that once distracted you. This isn't loneliness. It's the soul carving out space to meet itself. Next, we'll explore how this meaningful solitude becomes the crucible for clarity and self-discovery. The solitude that comes with a rising soul isn't what you might expect. It's not the empty ache of being alone, the kind that sends you scrolling through contacts or binge-watching shows to fill the void. It's something richer, deeper, like stepping into a quiet forest after years in a noisy city. You start to feel a distance between yourself and the world you once inhabited, not because you're rejected, but because you're redirecting. Friends might text less often, group chats might feel harder to engage, and crowded rooms might overwhelm you. Even when you're surrounded by others, there's a sense that you're not fully seen, not in the way you used to be. But here's the shift. You don't crave being seen like that anymore. This isolation isn't about absence. It's about presence, a sacred space where you meet yourself without distraction. This is the soul's sanctuary, where clarity begins to take shape. This meaningful solitude is the soul's way of pulling you inward when the external world no longer fits. It's not punishment, it's preparation. You might be like David, a 40-year-old graphic designer in Portland, Oregon, who always thrived in social circles. He was the life of the party, the one who planned game nights and brewery meetups. But as he hit his late 30s, he started declining invitations, not out of anger, but because the noise of those gatherings felt suffocating. At first, he worried he was becoming antisocial, that something was wrong with him. But alone in his apartment, sketching late into the night or hiking the 5-mile trails of Forest Park, he felt a peace he hadn't known before. In those quiet moments, he started asking questions he'd avoided. Why do I need everyone's approval? What do I actually believe? This wasn't loneliness, it was intimacy, not with others, but with himself. Carl Jung captured this beautifully when he said, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you. As your soul rises, what matters to you changes. You stop chasing attention and start seeking alignment. You stop needing to be understood and start needing to understand yourself." This can feel jarring in a culture that equates connection with safety. In America, we're taught that being alone is something to fix, that a full calendar is a full life. But this solitude is different. It's not about hiding. It's about healing. It's the space where your nervous system can breathe, where your soul can speak without interruption. Philosophically, this aligns with what Hannah Arendt called thinking as a solitary business. She argued that true understanding comes when we withdraw from the world's demands and engage with our own minds. In a hyper-connected world, where the average American checks their phone 144 times a day, per a 2023 study, this solitude is radical. It's a refusal to let external noise drown out your inner voice. Critical thinking is your guide here. Ask, why do I feel guilty for needing space? What am I afraid of finding in the quiet? What if this solitude is teaching me who I am? These questions don't just challenge your habits. They challenge the cultural myth that you're only valuable when you're visible. Practically, you can embrace this solitude by carving out intentional pockets of stillness. Start small. Turn off your phone for 30 minutes each evening and sit with a notebook, writing whatever comes. Fears, dreams, fragments of thought. For David, this meant dedicating Sunday mornings to coffee and silence. No music, no screens, just the sound of his own breathing. You can also seek solitude in nature. A 3-mile walk along a local river trail, noticing the rhythm of your steps, can feel like a conversation with your soul. Or try a digital detox 1 weekend a month, swapping social media for a good book or a long bath. These acts aren't about escaping life. They're about reclaiming it. This solitude can be uncomfortable, especially when you're used to constant connection. You might feel restless, tempted to text an old friend or scroll through X to fill the silence. But resist the urge. A 2021 study from the University of Michigan found that people who spent time alone reported higher self-esteem and emotional clarity over time. This isn't about cutting people off, it's about choosing yourself first. You'll notice which relationships fade and which deepen, David found that his closest friends didn't mind his quieter phase. They respected his need for space, and their conversations grew richer, rooted in shared authenticity rather than obligation. Emotionally, this solitude can feel like both a weight and a gift. You might grieve the ease of your old social self, the one who could blend into any crowd. But you'll also discover a strength you didn't know you had, the ability to stand in your own presence without needing validation. Try grounding rituals to ease the transition. Light a candle, safely, on a stable surface, and reflect on one thing you've learned about yourself in solitude. Or practice a 5-minute meditation, focusing on your breath, letting thoughts pass like leaves on a stream. These acts anchor you, reminding you that this solitude isn't empty. It's whole. The beauty of this solitude is that it transforms loneliness into intimacy. You rediscover your voice, your beliefs, your dreams, unfiltered by the world's expectations. David started designing art that reflected his inner world, not client briefs, and found a joy he'd lost in his 20s. You can do this too. Maybe it's writing poetry, gardening, or simply sitting with your thoughts. But these moments of solitude build a life that's yours. You stop needing to be invited or applauded. You start living for yourself, not the crowd. This isn't a phase. It's a homecoming, a return to the self you've always been. So if you're craving this quiet, don't fear it. Embrace it. The soul is calling you back to itself, and the clarity you find here will light the way forward. Next, we'll explore how this journey reshapes your relationships, pulling you away from what no longer resonates and toward connections that honor your truth. As your soul continues to rise, you begin to feel a quiet drift from the life you once knew. The people you used to laugh with, the routines that shaped your days, the roles you played so effortlessly, they start to feel like echoes of a past you no longer inhabit. You might sit at a family barbecue in an Atlanta suburb, surrounded by familiar faces, but find yourself silent, unable to connect in the way you once did. The conversations about sports or neighborhood gossip, once comforting, now feel like static. You try to join in, to smile and nod, but your heart isn't there. It's not anger or bitterness. It's a gentle detachment, a knowing that something in you has shifted, and the old life can't follow where you're going. This isn't rebellion. It's not a crisis. It's evolution, a sign that you're outgrowing what no longer resonates, making space for a life that's truer to who you're becoming. This disconnection from your old life is like stepping out of a well-worn pair of shoes that no longer fit. They carried you far, kept you safe, but now they pinch, and no amount of effort can make them comfortable again. The habits you leaned on, scrolling social media to unwind, working late to feel productive, saying yes to every invitation, start to feel like costumes you forgot to take off. You might notice it in small moments. You skip a weekly happy hour in downtown Austin, not because you're tired, but because the small talk feels hollow. Or you catch yourself zoning out during a friend's rant about drama that once pulled you in. You're not judging them. You're just not moved anymore. The music of your old life has changed, and you're learning to dance to a new rhythm, one that's quieter, deeper, more honest. Carl Jung described this as the soul reclaiming itself from the layers it adopted to survive. He saw it as a necessary step in individuation, the journey toward wholeness. The relationships, routines, and roles you once cherished weren't wrong. They were scaffolding, built to get you through a certain time. But as your soul awakens, that scaffolding starts to crumble, not because you're destroying it, but because you've outgrown it. This can feel disorienting, especially in a culture that values consistency and connection. In America, we're taught to hold tight to friendships, to stay loyal to traditions, to keep the machine of daily life running smoothly. But when your soul shifts, you can't stay in places where the air feels stale. You don't burn bridges. You simply stop crossing them, letting what no longer resonates fade with grace. Consider Rachel, a 39-year-old real estate agent in Charlotte, North Carolina. For years, her life revolved around networking events, open houses, and Sunday brunches with her college friends. She was the connector, the one who remembered birthdays and planned group trips. But one spring, after closing a big deal, she felt a hollowness she couldn't shake. The client dinners, the group texts, the endless hustle, they didn't spark joy anymore. She tried to push through, hosting a game night, but found herself retreating to the kitchen, craving silence over laughter. At first, she worried she was depressed or ungrateful, but in quiet moments, journaling by the light of a single lamp, she realized she was changing. She wanted conversations about purpose, not property values. She wanted mornings spent hiking the 4-mile trails of Crowder's Mountain, not scrolling X for likes. This wasn't rejection. It was realignment, her soul guiding her toward what felt true. From a philosophical perspective, this detachment echoes what Albert Camus called the absurd, the tension between our desire for meaning and the world's indifference. In modern America, where social capital often defines worth, stepping away from old connections can feel like absurdity, like defying the rules of belonging. Critical thinking becomes your compass here. Ask, why am I holding on to this relationship or routine? Is it habit, fear, or love? What would my life look like if I let go of what feels misaligned? These questions aren't about cutting ties recklessly. They're about discernment, choosing resonance over obligation. For Rachel, this meant politely declining brunch invites and joining a local writing group, where she could explore her thoughts without performing. Practically, you can navigate this drift by noticing what no longer feels like you. Start with a simple audit. Spend a week tracking your time, every coffee date, every Netflix binge, every work task. Then ask, which of these lit me up? Which felt like a chore? For Rachel, this revealed that her happiest moments were solitary or with one close friend, not in crowds. You can try this too. Say no to one obligation that feels heavy, like a family event that's more duty than joy, and use that time for something that feeds you. A 3-mile run, a quiet evening with a book, or a deep conversation with someone who gets you. These choices aren't selfish. They're sacred, honoring the soul's need for authenticity. This detachment can stir grief, even if it's subtle. You might mourn the version of yourself that fit so easily into the old life, the one who laughed on cue and never questioned the script. A 2023 study from the University of Chicago found that people transitioning out of social roles often experience anticipatory grief, a sadness for what they're leaving behind. Lean into this with rituals. Write a letter to your old self, thanking it for its strength, then store it in a drawer or burn it safely, following local fire codes. Or dedicate a 5-mile walk to reflecting on what you're releasing, letting each step carry you closer to your truth. These acts don't erase the ache, but they transform it into a bridge toward growth. The beauty of this drift is that it clears space for what's meant to meet you. As you let go of what no longer resonates, you make room for relationships and routines that align with your soul. Rachel found new friends in her writing group, people who valued her thoughts, not her status. She started waking early to meditate, not to hustle, and felt a peace she hadn't known in years. You can do this too. Swap one draining habit for a nourishing one, like trading late-night scrolling for 10 minutes of journaling. These shifts don't happen overnight, but they ripple, reshaping your life into one that feels like home. This evolution sets the stage for a deeper tension, one that brews within as your old self and new truth collide. Next, we'll explore how this inner conflict becomes the crucible for your soul's growth. The drift from your old life brings you face to face with a battle you didn't expect. Not with the world, but within yourself. It's as if two voices are speaking at once, each pulling you in a different direction. One is familiar, the voice of your old self, the one that knows how to survive, how to keep the peace, how to stay safe. It whispers, stay comfortable. Don't rock the boat. You've got a good thing going. This voice craves predictability, recognition, the warmth of the known. Then there's the other voice, quieter but stronger, the voice of your soul. It doesn't care about safety. It wants truth. It urges you to speak when you'd rather stay silent, to choose the unknown over the familiar, to risk being misunderstood for the sake of being real. This tension, this inner conflict, isn't a sign you're doing something wrong. It's proof you're growing, a marker of psychological maturity as your soul steps forward and your old self clings tight. This conflict is like standing at a crossroads in a dense fog, one path well-trodden, the other barely visible. You feel it in the smallest moments. You're about to agree to a project at work, but your gut says no, and you hesitate, torn between duty and instinct. Or you're with friends in a Seattle cafe, and someone makes a joke that stings, but instead of laughing it off, you feel a spark of anger, a urge to speak up. You catch yourself mid-action, realizing, this isn't me anymore, but you don't yet know what me is supposed to be. It's exhausting, not because you're broken, but because you're being stretched between two realities, familiar safety and unfamiliar freedom. This is the soul's quiet revolution, not in grand gestures, but in the subtle friction of becoming. Carl Jung called this the chaos of individuation, the necessary clash of opposites that precedes wholeness. He believed growth is never smooth. It's a spiral of contradictions, where the ego fights to maintain control and the soul pushes for liberation. This isn't dysfunction. It's depth, the shadow surfacing, the soul stepping into the light. Imagine Michael, a 45-year-old accountant in Boston. He's built a stable life, mortgage paid, kids in college, a corner office. But one winter, after a promotion he'd chased for years, he feels a restlessness he can't name. He starts questioning his career, his marriage, the persona he's crafted as the reliable guy. At home, he snaps at small things, then feels guilty, torn between the urge to keep everything steady and a deeper pull to explore who he is beyond his roles. This isn't a midlife crisis. It's an awakening, the soul demanding to be heard. Philosophically, this conflict resonates with Soren Kierkegaard's concept of the self as a relation, the idea that we're always in tension between who we are and who we might become. In America, where self-improvement is a cultural mantra, this tension can feel like failure, as if you should already have it all figured out. Critical thinking is your anchor. Ask, what is my old self protecting? What does my soul want me to see? What would happen if I chose truth over comfort? Just once. These questions don't resolve the conflict, but they give it purpose, turning friction into fuel. For Michael, this meant admitting he hated accounting, a truth that felt like betrayal after 20 years. But voicing it, even in a journal, sparked curiosity about what else he might do. Maybe teaching, maybe woodworking, maybe something he hadn't yet imagined. Practically, you can navigate this conflict by listening to both voices without rushing to pick a side. Start with a simple practice. When you feel torn, pause for 60 seconds and breathe. Notice the tension. Where does it live in your body? A racing heart? A clenched jaw? Then write down what each voice says. The old self might say, don't quit, you'll lose everything. The soul might whisper, you're meant for more. For Michael, this meant setting aside 15 minutes each evening to reflect, asking what feels true today. You can also experiment with small acts of courage. Say no to a request that feels misaligned, like an extra work task, or say yes to something that scares you, like a pottery class. These choices don't erase the tension, but they teach you to move through it. This conflict can feel like a war, especially when the old self fights hard to keep you safe. A 2022 study from Harvard University found that internal conflict during life transitions often triggers anxiety, but those who engage with it, through reflection or therapy, emerge with greater resilience. Lean into grounding practices. A 2-mile walk in a local park, focusing on the crunch of leaves, can calm the storm. Or try a 5-minute visualization. Picture your old self and your soul sitting together, not fighting, but talking. What do they need from each other? These acts don't solve the conflict. They soften it, letting clarity emerge over time. The gift of this tension is that it forges you. You learn that growth isn't a straight line. It's a spiral, revisiting old fears with new wisdom. Michael didn't quit his job, but he started taking night classes in education, a step toward a dream he'd buried. You can do this too. Choose one small action that honors your soul, like cutting back on overtime to write, or having an honest talk with a partner. These steps don't end the conflict, but they shift its balance, giving your soul more room to lead. This inner battle isn't your undoing. It's your becoming, a sign that you're ready to live a life that's yours. Next, we'll dive into how this journey sharpens your intuition, letting you see truth in ways you never could before. As your soul deepens its journey, the nights begin to speak in ways they never did before. Your dreams, once fleeting or forgotten, take on a vividness that lingers into the morning. You might wake up in your Denver apartment, Heart racing from a dream where you're running through a forest, chased by shadows, or standing at the edge of a cliff, unafraid, ready to leap. These aren't just random images. They're alive with meaning, rich with symbols that feel like messages from a part of you that's wiser than your waking mind. You see faces from your past, places you've never been, scenes that stir emotions you can't explain. At first, you might dismiss them as strange, but something in you knows better. These dreams are the voice of your unconscious, whispering truths about what you need to face, what you need to forgive, what you need to embrace. This isn't fantasy. It's your soul painting a map for your awakening. These vivid dreams are like letters from your deeper self, written in a language of metaphor and feeling. You might dream of a house with locked rooms, each door a part of your life you've closed off, grief unprocessed, dreams abandoned, truths unspoken. Or you might see a river, its current pulling you towards something new, urging you to let go of what weighs you down. Carl Jung, whose work on the psyche remains a guiding light, saw dreams as the unconscious mind's way of communicating what the conscious mind ignores. He believed they carry archetypal symbols, universal patterns that connect you to the collective human experience, while also speaking to your personal story. A dream of falling might signal fear of losing control, while flying could mean you're ready to soar beyond old limits. These images aren't random. They're invitations to look at what's buried, to heal what's broken, to step into what's possible. Imagine Laura, a 41-year-old librarian in Boise, Idaho. She's always been practical. Her days filled with cataloging books and helping patrons, her nights quiet and routine. But recently, her sleep is anything but ordinary. She dreams of a garden where every flower she touches wilts, leaving her hands covered in petals. Night after night, the dream returns, vivid and unsettling. At first, she ignores it, chalking it up to stress. But the images stick, tugging at her until she starts writing them down in a notebook by her bed. As she describes the wilting flowers, she realizes they mirror her fear of failure, her habit of shrinking from risks to stay safe. The dream isn't judging her. It's asking her to face this fear, to forgive herself for the times she held back, to plant new seeds in her life. This isn't just a dream. It's a dialogue, her soul guiding her toward courage. From a philosophical perspective, this aligns with what Martin Buber called I-Thou encounters, moments of deep connection, not just with others, but with the divine within yourself. Dreams are such encounters, a meeting between your conscious self and the mystery of your unconscious. In American culture, where logic and productivity often reign, dreams can feel frivolous, like distractions from real life. But critical thinking invites you to question this. Ask, what if my dreams are more than nonsense? What if they're showing me what I'm too busy to see? What might I discover if I listen? These questions don't just honor your dreams. They challenge the cultural bias that only waking life matters, opening you to a richer way of knowing. Practically, you can engage with your dreams by keeping a dream journal. Place a notebook and pen by your bed, and each morning, write down whatever you remember, even fragments, a color, a feeling, a single image. Don't analyze it first, just capture the raw material. For Laura, this meant sketching the wilting garden, which led her to journal about her fears of disappointing others. You can try this too. Spend 5 minutes each morning jotting down your dreams, then ask, what does this remind me of in my life? If a dream feels heavy, like Laura's, take it for a walk. Literally, a 3-mile hike along a local trail, reflecting on the dream's images, can unlock insights your mind alone can't reach. If dreams feel elusive, set an intention before sleep. Show me what I need to see. This simple act primes your unconscious to speak. This process can stir emotions, especially if dreams surface old wounds. A 2023 study from the University of California found that people who actively engage with their dreams, through journaling or discussion, report greater emotional clarity and reduced anxiety over time. You don't need to interpret every symbol perfectly. The act of listening is enough. Ground yourself with rituals. After writing a dream, sip coffee slowly, letting the warmth anchor you, or practice a 5-minute meditation, breathing deeply as you hold the dream's images in mind. These acts don't force answers. They create space for them to emerge. For Laura, this led to small but bold steps. She signed up for a public speaking class, facing her fear of failure head-on. You can do this too. Let a dream's message inspire one action, like apologizing to someone you've hurt or trying a new hobby that scares you. The gift of these vivid dreams is that they reconnect you to your inner wisdom. They remind you that you're more than your to-do list, more than your roles, more than your doubts. They're a bridge to the parts of you that know what's true, even when your waking mind hesitates. As you listen, you start to trust this deeper voice, not just in sleep, but in daylight, where it sharpens into something else. Intuition. Next, we'll explore how this awakening hones your ability to sense truth, guiding you like a compass through a world full of noise. As your dreams illuminate the hidden corners of your soul, something else begins to sharpen. A quiet, unshakable knowing that cuts through the clutter of everyday life. You walk into a room, maybe a coworker's office in San Francisco, and feel a subtle unease, a sense that something's off, though nothing seems visibly wrong. You meet someone new, and despite their charm, your gut whispers, this isn't authentic. Or you're faced with a choice, a job offer, a move, a relationship, and without a clear reason, you know which path is yours. This isn't logic or analysis. It's intuition, a visceral clarity that bypasses explanation, as if your body has become a compass, pointing you toward truth and away from what's false. This isn't a random gift. It's your soul's awakening, tuning you to energies and realities your conscious mind can't yet name. This sharpened intuition is like a sixth sense, alive in your bones, your breath, your heartbeat. It's not loud or dramatic. It's subtle, a nudge, a pause, a feeling that lingers until you listen. You might sense dishonesty in a friend's smile, not because of their words, but because of the energy behind them. Or you feel drawn to a stranger at a bookstore in New Orleans, their presence radiating a warmth you can't explain. Carl Jung saw intuition as a function of the psyche, a way of perceiving that transcends reason, connecting you to the collective unconscious, a shared well of human wisdom. When your soul rises, this connection deepens, letting you feel what's true before your mind catches up. It's not about being psychic. It's about being present, your body and soul aligned as one. Picture Sam, a 37-year-old chef in Nashville, Tennessee. He's always trusted his instincts in the kitchen, knowing when a dish needs a pinch of salt or a dash of spice. But lately, his intuition is speaking beyond recipes. At a restaurant meeting, his boss pitches a new menu, and though the numbers look good, Sam's stomach tightens, a wordless warning. He can't explain it, but he trusts it, politely questioning the plan, only to later learn the supplier was unreliable. Outside work, he starts noticing shifts. A friend's flattery feels forced. A new hire's energy feels genuine. At first, he doubts himself, worried he's reading too much into things. But as he listens, he realizes his body is guiding him, not with fear, but with clarity, helping him navigate a world where truth is often masked. Philosophically, this intuition aligns with what Immanuel Kant called immediate knowledge, a direct perception of reality that doesn't rely on reasoning. In a culture obsessed with data and proof, intuition can feel like a rebel, a voice that defies the spreadsheet. Critical thinking strengthens it. Ask, when have I felt this before, and was it right? What happens when I ignore this feeling? What if my body knows something my mind hasn't learned? These questions don't just validate your intuition. They train it like a muscle to guide you more clearly. For Sam, this meant reflecting on past moments when his gut was right, like when he left a toxic job despite a good salary. Each time he trusted it, his path became clearer. Practically, you can hone your intuition by tuning into your body's signals. Start with a daily check-in. Sit quietly for 2 minutes, eyes closed, and scan your body. Where do you feel tension? Ease? When faced with a decision, notice how your body responds. Does it lean in or pull back? For Sam, this meant pausing before saying yes to new commitments, checking his gut first. You can try this too. Next time you're in a conversation, notice your body's cues. Does your chest tighten? Does your heart lift? These signals aren't random. They're your soul's language. You can also practice in low-stakes settings. At a farmer's market, let your intuition guide you to a stall, or in a bookstore, pick a book that feels right. These small acts build trust in your inner compass. This sharpening can feel unsettling, especially when it reveals uncomfortable truths. A 2024 study from Yale University found that people with heightened intuition often report short-term discomfort but long-term confidence in their decisions. You might sense a friend's resentment or a job's misalignment before it's obvious, and that clarity can feel isolating. Ground yourself with practices. A 4-mile run, focusing on your breath, can clear the noise, letting your intuition shine. Or try a 5-minute gratitude practice, listing 3 things you trust about yourself. These acts anchor you, reminding you that intuition isn't a burden. It's a gift, a guide through a world where appearances deceive. The beauty of this intuition is that it redefines how you move through life. You stop needing external validation, likes, approvals, applause, because your soul knows what's true. Sam started trusting his instincts not just at work, but in his relationships, choosing friends who felt genuine and stepping away from those who didn't. You can do this too. Let your intuition guide one choice today, like declining a draining invite or reaching out to someone who feels right. These acts don't just align you, they liberate you, letting you live from a place of truth. This sharpened sense sets the stage for a new kind of solitude, one that's not just meaningful, but sacred. Next, we'll explore how this journey leads you to embrace isolation, not as loneliness, but as a space where your soul thrives. As your soul continues its quiet ascent, you might find yourself stepping further away from the world you once knew, not out of rejection, but out of necessity. The crowded rooms, the constant buzz of group chats, the expectations that once defined your days, they begin to feel like static, drowning out the voice within. You start craving silence, not as an escape, but as a sanctuary. You might drive 10 miles out of Phoenix to a desert trail, the vastness of the landscape mirroring the space you're carving inside yourself. Or you sit alone in your Baltimore apartment, the hum of the city outside fading as you sink into stillness. This isn't loneliness, though it might look like it to others. This is sacred isolation, a deliberate retreat from the noise of the old world to heal, to reorient, to let your soul grow. In this quiet, you're not alone. You're whole, standing in the presence of your deepest self. This isolation is like stepping into a chrysalis, a space where transformation happens unseen. It's not about cutting people off or hiding from life. It's about creating a container for your soul to breathe, to mend, to expand. You might notice it in small shifts. You skip a friend's party, not because you don't care, but because you need the evening to journal, to think, to simply be. Or you turn down a work trip, choosing a weekend at home over another round of networking. At first, this can feel selfish, even wrong, especially in a culture that equates busyness with value. American life often demands you stay connected, visible, always on. But this retreat isn't withdrawal. It's wisdom, your soul knowing that healing requires space, that growth requires silence. In this stillness, you begin to hear what's true, not what's expected. Carl Jung, whose insights into the psyche remain a beacon, saw this kind of isolation as essential for individuation, the process of becoming whole. He believed that true self-discovery happens not in the crowd, but in the quiet confrontation with oneself. This isn't about becoming a recluse. It's about prioritizing your inner world over external demands. You might feel like Anna, a 43-year-old therapist in Madison, Wisconsin. For years, she was everyone's rock. Clients, friends, family all leaned on her. But after a divorce, she felt a pull to pull back. She stopped hosting weekly dinners, declined speaking engagements, and spent her evenings walking the 3-mile loop around Lake Monona, alone with her thoughts. At first, she worried she was letting people down. But in those quiet hours, she found clarity. She wasn't running from life. She was rebuilding it, piece by piece, in a way that felt true. From a philosophical perspective, this isolation resonates with what Soren Kierkegaard called the individual before God. The idea that true authenticity comes from standing alone, not in defiance, but in reverence for your own existence. In modern America, where social media metrics and packed schedules often define worth, this kind of solitude is revolutionary. Critical thinking becomes your guide. Ask, why do I feel guilty for needing space? What am I gaining in this stillness? What if this isolation is preparing me for something greater? These questions don't just justify your retreat, they sanctify it, challenging the cultural myth that you're only valuable when you're surrounded. For Anna, this meant recognizing that her need for solitude wasn't failure. It was strength, a commitment to her own healing. Practically, you can embrace this isolation by creating intentional pockets of solitude. Start small. Set aside 20 minutes each day to be alone. No phone, no distractions. Just you and your breath. Sit on a park bench, watch the clouds, let your mind wander. For Anna, this meant turning her morning coffee into a ritual, sipping slowly in silence, letting thoughts rise and fall. You can try this too. Dedicate one evening a week to unplug, maybe reading poetry or listening to the wind outside. If silence feels heavy, ground it with movement. A 4-mile hike, each step a chance to process what's stirring. Or try a solitude date. Visit a museum alone, letting the art speak to you without commentary. These acts aren't about escaping, they're about arriving, meeting yourself where you are. This isolation can stir discomfort, especially when others don't understand. A 2023 study from the University of Michigan found that intentional solitude boosts self-awareness but can trigger short-term social anxiety. As people worry about being judged, you might feel this too. Friends might text, "Where have you been?" Or family might hint you're distant. Lean into grounding rituals. Light a candle, safely, on a heat-resistant surface, and reflect on one thing this solitude has taught you. Or practice a 5-minute body scan, noticing where you hold tension, letting it soften. These acts remind you that this isolation isn't punishment. It's purpose, a space where your soul can stretch and grow. Anna found that her quiet evenings led to new insights about her work, inspiring her to shift her therapy practice toward mindfulness-based healing. You can do this too. Let solitude guide one small change, like starting a journal or exploring a passion you've ignored. The beauty of this isolation is that it transforms absence into presence. You're not running from the world, you're rooting into yourself, building a foundation that no external noise can shake. In this stillness, you find strength, not fragility, clarity, not confusion. You learn that you don't need to be surrounded to be whole. You carry wholeness within. This sacred space prepares you for the next step, where you begin to shed the roles that once defined you, making room for a truer self to emerge. Next, we'll explore how letting go of old identities becomes the key to unlocking your authentic soul. As you settle into this sacred isolation, you start to notice something else shifting. The weight of the roles you've carried for years begins to lift. The labels you've worn, whether by choice or circumstance, leader, caretaker, achiever, peacemaker, start to feel like costumes that no longer fit. You might be the one who always mediates family arguments, the colleague who stays late to ensure success, the friend who never says no. These identities shaped you, gave you purpose, earned you love. But now, as your soul rises, they feel heavy, like armor you put on to survive but no longer need to thrive. Letting go of these roles isn't about abandoning responsibility. It's about releasing what's false, creating space for the authentic self to step forward. This isn't loss. It's liberation, a shedding of the old to reveal the truth of who you are. This release of old roles is like clearing out a closet, pulling out clothes you haven't worn in years, realizing they no longer suit you. You might notice it in moments of quiet defiance. You say no to a family request that once felt mandatory, or you step back from a work project that demands too much of your soul. It's not that you don't care. It's that you're starting to care more about yourself, about living in alignment with your truth. Carl Jung saw this as a critical stage of individuation, where the persona, the social mask you wear, begins to dissolve, revealing the deeper self beneath. These roles weren't lies. They were tools, scaffolding for a time when you needed to fit in, to be seen, to survive. But as your soul awakens, you no longer need them to define you. You define yourself. Picture James, a 48-year-old high school principal in Raleigh, North Carolina. For decades, he's been the fixer, resolving conflicts, mentoring teachers, being the steady hand in every crisis. His identity as the reliable leader earned him respect, promotions, a life others envied. But one fall, after a particularly draining school board meeting, he feels a crack in his armor. The role he's mastered feels suffocating, like a suit tailored for someone else. He starts questioning, why am I always the one to step in? What do I want when I'm not fixing things? In quiet moments, walking the 5-mile trail around Lake Johnson, he realizes he's been hiding his own dreams of writing, of traveling, of simply being, to uphold this persona. Letting go feels terrifying, like betraying everyone who relies on him. But it's also freeing, a chance to meet the man he's becoming. From a philosophical lens, this shedding aligns with what Friedrich Nietzsche called becoming who you are, a call to strip away external definitions and embrace your unique essence. In American culture, where identity is often tied to achievement or social roles, this can feel like rebellion. You're taught to be the team player, the go-getter, the one who holds it all together. Critical thinking becomes your ally here. Ask, which roles am I playing out of habit? Which ones feel like me and which feel like performance? What would I do if no one was watching? These questions don't just challenge your roles, they redefine them, letting you choose which to keep and which to release. For James, this meant admitting he didn't want to be principal forever, a truth that led him to enroll in a creative writing course, a small but seismic step. Practically, you can begin this release by noticing where your roles feel heavy. Spend a week tracking moments when you say yes out of duty, not desire. Then experiment. Say no to one expectation, like hosting a holiday dinner, and see how it feels. For James, this meant delegating a school event to a colleague, freeing up an evening to write. You can try this too. Step back from one role, maybe the friend who always listens, and redirect that energy to something that lights you up, like painting or volunteering. If guilt arises, ground it with rituals. Write a letter to the role you're releasing, thanking it for its service, then store it or burn it safely, per local fire codes. Or dedicate a 4-mile run to reflecting on who you are without that role, letting each step lighten your load. This shedding can stir fear, especially when roles are tied to love or approval. A 2024 study from Stanford University found that people letting go of social identities often experience temporary insecurity but gain long-term confidence. You might worry, who am I without this role? Lean into grounding practices. A 5-minute meditation, visualizing yourself free of the role, can ease the transition. Or try a gratitude practice, listing 3 things you love about yourself, not your roles. These acts remind you that your worth isn't in what you do, it's in who you are. James found that writing reconnected him to a joy he'd forgotten, and he started mentoring students in creative writing, a role that felt authentic, not imposed. You can do this too. Replace one old role with a new one that resonates, like swapping people-pleasing for self-expression. The gift of this release is that it clears the way for your true self to emerge. You're not erasing your past, you're refining it, keeping what's real and letting go of what's not. You stop living for applause and start living for truth. This isn't a rejection of others. It's a reclamation of you, a step toward a life that feels like home. As you shed these roles, you find a new kind of freedom, one that doesn't need validation from the world. Next, we'll explore how this journey leads you to stop explaining yourself, embracing a courage that no longer fears being misunderstood. As your soul carves its path through the layers of who you've been, you reach a quiet but profound milestone. You no longer feel the need to explain yourself to be accepted. The urge to justify your choices, your silence, your dreams. It fades, replaced by a calm certainty that your truth doesn't require approval. You might be at a coffee shop in Portland, Oregon, declining a friend's invitation to a weekend event, and when they press for a reason, you simply smile and say, "It's not for me right now." No long explanation, no apology. Or you're in a Chicago boardroom, sharing an idea that feels right to you, and when it's met with skepticism, you don't scramble to defend it. You let it stand, unshaken. This isn't arrogance or indifference. It's freedom, a deep acceptance that not everyone will understand you, and that's no longer a threat. Your soul has learned to trust itself, and in that trust, you find a courage that fears no misunderstanding. This shift is like stepping out of a courtroom where you've spent years defending your existence. For so long, you might have tailored your words, your actions, even your dreams to fit others' expectations. Family who wanted you to follow their path, friends who needed you to stay the same, a culture that rewards conformity. You explained why you left that job, why you're single, why you're chasing a passion that doesn't pay. But as your soul rises, those explanations feel like chains. You realize that the need to be understood often comes from a fear of being alone in your truth. Letting go of that need is like opening a window in a stuffy room. The air clears and you can breathe. You start to see that being misunderstood isn't failure. It's evidence you're living authentically, carving a path that's yours alone. Carl Jung, whose wisdom on the soul's journey remains timeless, saw this as a hallmark of individuation. The moment when you stand fully in your own truth, regardless of external validation. He believed that the psyche's deepest work is to integrate all parts of you, not to win approval from the world. This can feel radical in a society that thrives on consensus, where social media platforms like X amplify voices that seek likes and agreement. You might notice it in small acts of defiance. You post a thought online knowing it might spark debate and don't check the comments. Or you choose a quieter life, turning down invitations to crowded Miami clubs. And when someone calls you boring, you laugh, unbothered. This isn't about shutting others out. It's about letting yourself in, honoring your truth over the noise of expectation. Consider Maya, a 44-year-old graphic designer in Austin, Texas. For years, she shaped her career to please clients, her style to fit trends, her personality to keep friends comfortable. She was the easygoing one, always explaining her choices to avoid conflict. Why she worked late, why she didn't date, why she avoided certain family events. But one summer, after a project she poured her heart into was criticized, she felt a shift. She stopped justifying her creative decisions, presenting her work with quiet confidence instead. When a friend questioned her decision to take a sabbatical to travel, she didn't list reasons. She said, "It's what I need." At first, the silence from others felt heavy, like judgment. But over time, she realized their confusion wasn't her burden. By refusing to explain, she reclaimed her energy, her focus, her truth. From a philosophical perspective, this aligns with what Jean-Paul Sartre called authentic existence. Living in accordance with your own values, not the gaze of others. In American culture, where personal branding and public approval often define success, this is a quiet rebellion. Critical thinking becomes your anchor. Ask, why do I feel the need to explain this choice? Whose approval am I seeking? What if I trusted my truth without needing agreement? These questions don't just free you from explanation, they free you from fear, challenging the cultural script that your worth depends on being understood. For Maya, this meant recognizing that her sabbatical wasn't about proving anything. It was about living for herself, not her audience. Practically, you can cultivate this freedom by practicing small acts of unapologetic truth. Start with one moment each day where you choose not to explain. Decline an invitation with a simple, "I can't make it," or share an opinion without softening it for approval. For Maya, this meant posting her travel photos on X without captions, letting the images speak for themselves. You can try this too. Next time someone questions your choice, why you're not drinking at a party, why you're leaving a job, pause, smile, and say, "It's just where I'm at." If discomfort arises, ground it with rituals. Write a single sentence in a journal, like, "I am enough as I am," and let it sink in. Or take a 3-mile walk, reflecting on how it feels to stand in your truth without defense. These acts build a muscle, one that grows stronger with each choice to let your truth stand alone. This shift can stir unease, especially when others push back. A 2024 study from the University of California found that people who stop seeking external validation often face short-term social friction but report higher self-esteem over time. You might notice friends pulling away, family misinterpreting your silence as coldness. Lean into grounding practices. A 5-minute meditation, focusing on your breath, can recenter you when judgment stings. Or try a gratitude practice, listing 3 things you value about your choices, like the peace of saying no or the joy of following your heart. These acts remind you that your truth is your home, not the opinions of others. Maya found that her travels led her to new communities, artists who valued her for who she was, not who she explained herself to be. You can do this too. Let one unapologetic choice, like pursuing a passion or setting a boundary, open doors to people who see you clearly. The beauty of this freedom is that it redefines your relationship with the world. You stop measuring your worth by how many nod in agreement. You start living for the quiet joy of being yourself, unfiltered, unapologized. This isn't about isolation, it's about connection, first to yourself, then to those who meet you in your truth. You become a beacon, not for approval but for authenticity, inspiring others to do the same. As you embrace this courage, you realize that being misunderstood isn't a loss. It's a gift, a sign you're living a life that's truly yours. This journey, from craving depth to standing in your truth, is the soul's awakening, and it's only the beginning. This journey we've walked together, from craving depth to embracing your unapologetic truth, has been a map of the soul's awakening. It began with a hunger for meaning, a rejection of shallow conversations and surface goals, pulling you towards stillness and authenticity. From there, you faced the collapse of old beliefs, not as destruction, but as transformation, clearing space for what's true. Emotions surged, not as chaos, but as messengers, guiding you to feel rather than control. Solitude became your sanctuary, not loneliness, but a space to meet yourself. You drifted from the old life, not in rebellion, but in evolution, letting go of what no longer resonated. Inner conflict marked your growth, a clash between safety and truth that forged your maturity. Dreams spoke vividly, carrying symbols of what to face or forgive, while intuition sharpened, tuning you to truth beyond reason. Isolation became sacred, a chrysalis for healing, and old roles fell away, revealing the self beneath. Now, you stand here no longer explaining, no longer fearing misunderstanding, free to live as you are. This is the soul's rising, a journey not to a destination, but to a way of being, where every step is a return to your deepest truth. This path isn't linear. It's a spiral, revisiting old wounds with new wisdom, uncovering new layers of yourself with each turn. It's not about perfection, but presence, showing up for your soul, even when it's messy, even when it's hard. Carl Jung reminded us that the soul's work is never finished, but every moment of courage, every choice to honor your truth, brings you closer to wholeness. In a world that demands you perform, conform, and explain, this journey is your rebellion, a quiet, powerful refusal to be anything but yourself. You've learned that meaning lies in the quiet moments, that transformation comes through discomfort, that authenticity is your greatest strength. This is your soul's gift, not just to you, but to the world, a light that shines brighter when you live unapologetically. What's next is up to you. The soul's awakening doesn't end. It deepens, unfolding new questions, new truths, new freedoms. You might find yourself drawn to new passions, new communities, new ways of seeing the world. Or you might simply live more fully in the present, savoring the weight of a coffee cup, the sound of rain, the stillness of your own breath. Wherever this journey takes you, know that you're not alone. Not because others always understand, but because your soul is with you, a constant guide, a steady home. This is the life you're building, one choice at a time, one truth at a time, one courageous step at a time. In today's world, where noise is constant and distraction is king, this journey offers practical ways to stay grounded. Start with a daily pause. 5 minutes of silence. No phone. Just you and your breath, noticing what rises. Keep a journal, not to document every detail, but to capture one truth each day. A feeling, a dream, a moment of clarity. Say no to one thing that feels misaligned, whether it's a social event or a work task, and yes to one thing that sparks joy, like a walk or a new hobby. These aren't grand gestures. They're quiet revolutions, acts that keep your soul's voice clear amid the chaos. In a culture that rewards speed, choose slowness. In a world that demands answers, choose questions. Your life is your canvas, and every choice to live authentically is a brushstroke, painting a story that's yours alone. If this journey resonates with you, we'd love to hear from you on the ZENLIGHT 8 YouTube channel, where we dive deeper into the soul's awakening. Subscribe and join our community of truth seekers, where we explore how to live with depth, courage, and authenticity. Drop a comment on our latest video with the number 7. It's our way of connecting, a signal that you're on this path with us. Share your story, your insights, or just say hi. Your voice matters, and we're here to listen. Let's keep this journey going together, one step, one truth, one soul at a time.